Right, we're going to go ahead and get started with the Stock Geek live broadcast. And we're starting a couple minutes early, which is totally okay. I want to make sure that technologically everything started working, and I'm hoping that it is. I am going to check this on my phone real quick and make sure that it's working, which is why I started early, so that I could do that without interrupting things too much. Things too much. Thanks. Oh, and there it goes. Hi, Andy. Thanks. Appreciate that. Thanks for joining. And I'm still trying to figure out how it tells me how many you're watching. um, but yeah, thanks a lot. So let's see here. Probably. Oh, and there it goes. Oh, in there. Hi, Andy, yeah. Thanks. I can hear myself there. Very new to the whole. I've never done a live stream before. Well, the other day, I think Monday, I did a quick. That ended up being like a 40-minute live stream just because a few people joined unexpectedly. I don't expect that people would actually join just, because they see it pop up, which is why I went ahead and scheduled one. And if you have any ideas for topics, things you want to hear about and talk about, please put them in the chat there. And I'll make sure to make a note. In fact, I should probably pull up my notes real quick. Actually, I'll use my laptop over here. And then there's Chad. Oh, great. Oh, yeah. If anything goes wrong, we blame Chad. That's just the way that works, by the way. And if you don't know about this, Chad's one of my coworkers and a good friend, and we just blame him for pretty much everything. So, and what were you saying? There's a way to do what? Because it's a little bit delayed. So, yeah, it's a little bit delayed. But yeah, so Chad, if you're wondering, I'm using OBS, and I see the chat on the right side, and let me just turn off. I'm gonna put on live chat so that I see everything instead of just top chat. So, let's see here. Turn off your radio. Actually, I have some. So just a quick. I know it's fair. So the plan for today is to just kind of talk about, and the reason I'm doing this, I started out by recording a video. I think the screen is okay. Yeah, there's a way to do it in OBS, and I looked it up, and I just went, yeah, no, I don't care. I mean, I care, but I've got it on my phone here, and I can just swipe down and probably see how many, do the whole refresh thing. Yeah, I'm not overly worried about it. If I get 2 people watching, or if I get nobody watching, I'm happy, because then it'll just be online and somebody else can watch it later, which I'm sure will happen. But yeah, there's a way you have to use like a plugin for OBS, and then you have to use an online service that the plugin talks to, and the online service uses the YouTube API, and blah 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 blah. Don't care. If I was going to be a professional streamer, I would be concerned about it, but I'm not, so I'm not. Yeah, so the reason I'm doing this is because the channel just hit 1,000 subscribers, and that's been a long time coming. I haven't really worked super hard toward that. I used to promote the channel more because I was trying to support myself more with it, and I'm no longer concerned with that. It's the channel, the website, it's all gone back into 100% hobby mode. For a while, I was trying to at least get it to support itself so that I could even afford to do ham radio. And I wanted to document projects. And I'll talk about that too, like how the website got started, how the YouTube channel got started, because it did not get started because of ham radio. It all started for actually quite different reasons. And so I'm going to talk about that and just kind of give the, one of my favorite books is The Prehistory of the Far Side, and it talks about like how the Far Side came to be and the journey along the way and that kind of thing. So I kind of wanted to mimic that a little bit with the stream. And the other day I did set up, I think it was Monday night, I sat down and recorded what I thought would be like a 20-minute retrospective, and it ended up being like literally like an hour and 20 minutes or something. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna scrap that. And there's no way anybody's gonna want to watch an hour and 20 minutes of me yakking. So, but maybe they'll watch it if it's live. So there's that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and if somebody wants to see the entirety of it, they can go back and watch it. So I'll dive right in, and I thought I would tell us, since my channel and my site miss.geek.com are mostly ham radio based, I thought I would tell you a little bit of my own history and kind of set the scene, I suppose. And growing up, one of my first like aha moments was when when it comes to hobbies and things. I always loved airplanes, and aviation's always been a love of mine. And maybe someday, when I strike it big, I'll go get my private pilot's license. But I'm not hard. It's something I would like to do someday. And I even tried to do that when I was a teenager, and that just didn't work out. But when I was about 8 years old, we ended up moving from Nevada to Southern California, and then to another place in Southern California, all within like 5 or 6 months. And in fact, I went to 3 different grade schools in the second grade. So that was kind of rough for a young person. But one of the things that my parents did, which was really cool, is they got me one of those Radio Shack 30-in-1 kits. Now, if I was 8 years old, this had been like 1984, 85. Right in there. And so it was one of those Radio Shack 30-in-1 kits with the box. It's basically cardboard with some plastic on the sides and all the little springs, and you put the components in, and I think one of the components was a 555 timer. I'm almost certain of it. There's a site that actually shows all those kits, and I don't have it bookmarked. I'm not going to go searching for it. But this kit, it says there's 3 watching, so hello. I remember laying in bed, and we had moved to Palm Springs, California, because my dad got a job there in that valley, and my dad wasn't a technology guy. He could barely even use technology. He worked on water wells, and he got a job there because it's a lot of irrigation there. There's tens of thousands of water wells in that area. They call it Palm Springs because it's full of water. Anyway, they got me this thing, and I remember before we got an apartment, there was a motel, and motel with rooms surrounding a pool. That's all I remember, and it wasn't a nice place, and it was just temporary. So we had a place to land before we got into an apartment, which we did 3 weeks later. And I remember laying in bed. It might have been a sleeping bag. I can't remember. And I'd followed the directions, and I put this thing together, and there was I think it had a 9-volt battery, or 3C batteries or something like that, and it had an LED, and that LED blinked. Just about once every 1 or 2 seconds it blinked, and it did that all night, and I was just mesmerized at the fact that hooking up wires in a certain way with these components made this LED blink, and it was just rocket science to me. And then I was interested in computers and stuff and everything, but I wasn't really didn't have one. And then in second grade, 8 years old, same year, I started going to school in Palm Springs, and they had a computer lab. And this is like 1984, so the computer lab was TI-99 4As, which, if you look those up on Wikipedia, they weren't even that good at computers. I think they had a Motorola 6000, or was it I can't remember. It was a Motorola chip, I think. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Like 68. I think it was a Motorola 6800. It might have been a proprietary TI chip. Don't remember. It doesn't matter. And all the kids had, there was like 15 computers and 30 kids, so we were doubled up. And of course, no disk drives, no tape drives even, no storage. So if you wanted the computer to do something, you had to tell it to do it with BASIC. And so everybody had these books with all the different basic programs in them, most of them, 5 to 25 lines roughly. And I remember I did one where you would take whatever you typed in and reverse it. So like I remember, the kids, we all started typing in our names, and my name, instead of being Ryan, was Nair, N-A-Y-R. And, oh, that's cool, computer did a thing that I told it to do. I don't know how it worked, but that's cool. One of the other kids, and most everybody had black and white TVs sitting on top, little 12 or 13 inch black and white TVs sitting on top of their console computer. A few of the kids had color TVs. And this is well before such things were understood. And I'll explain. One of the kids did a program that displayed lots of bright flashing colors on the screen, and they had a color screen. Well, it turns out our teacher was epileptic, which we found out when she fell to the floor convulsing, and her tongue turned blue. It turns out her tongue turned blue because she was chewing bubblegum at the time. And there was another teacher in the 5th grade, and he had been a doctor, and why he was teaching after being a medical doctor, I don't know. I wonder these days. But me and another kid ran and got him, and he came, and everything was fine. The teacher was fine, but it blew me away that a computer could have an effect like that. And it just, whatever it was, it was something that I loved computers ever since. And after that, my grandparents gave me a Radio Shack Coco 3, Trash 80 Coco 3, and it had a tape drive, and it had been my aunt's, and my aunt was my aunt, and I ended up getting it. And so I learned how to use it, but I didn't really care for it that much. And then when I was 13, my dad's boss saw the future. This is 1989. My dad's boss saw the future, and he's like, your kids, to his employees, your kids need computers. And so he self-financed through the company, everybody who wanted one getting a computer, they could pay it back through their paychecks. My dad said, that's my kid. And that's what happened. So I got a 286, 12 megahertz with 1 megabyte of RAM, a 60 megabyte hard drive, an RLL hard drive, if anybody knows what those are. What else? A VGA video card, 256 color, 640 by 480. A 14-inch VGA monitor, which by itself was like $900 at the time. And a Panasonic KXP 1080, I think. 9-pin dot matrix printer, and the rest was history. That was supposed to be the family computer, and I don't think I ever let anybody else get a hold of it. It was just me, my mom, and dad. Dad didn't care, and mom was already busy with other things in her life, and I think she used it like twice. And then that was that, and that was my career, and it was my career in computers. Somewhere along the line, radio came into it. And I don't really remember what got me into radio, but I mean, CBs were cool. I mean, I'm a kid in the early 80s, and CBs were cool, and radio communication was cool. But I specifically remember hearing, I was mesmerized by the sound of pilots talking on the radio. And one of the first things I ever did with my computer was I got Microsoft Flight Simulator 4. And Microsoft Flight Simulator 4, or FS4, was not a great program. It was great for what it was, but on a 286, I got like 7 or 8 frames per second, or maybe 4 or 5 frames per second. Not very much at all. But you would not believe, I actually learned how to do like VOR navigation and a bunch of other stuff. But the sound of pilots talking mesmerized me. And then I learned that if you wanted to become a pilot, you needed either some sort of FCC radio license. So you could get a radio license from the FCC, or if you had your amateur radio license, you wouldn't need to do that. So I thought, well, I could do that. So I guess that kind of is the genesis of ham radio. So when I was 19, I was working at an electronics shop, shockingly. I might even remember when I was working. I worked at a Radio Shack for about 3 months, and then I worked at a place in Reno called Sandy's Electronics, which was like a electronics warehouse type thing. And it wasn't really a warehouse, but if you've gone to that section of Fry's where it's all the cool components and soldering irons and the the copper boards and all that, it was that kind of place. Anyway, and I think as while I was working there, all of the local radio and television head engineers came there for parts, and I got to know a bunch of hams, and I became one. I got my license in July of '96, and I was KC7RYS, and I just got my tech license back then. The no clue tech. But I got into it. I built all my own accessories. I bought parts at work to make a headset with a PTT, a handheld PTT switch and an XLR jack, and I wired it all myself. I was building my own antennas. I built like a 3-beam Yagi with some PVC, and I had a lot of fun with my little HT keying up repeaters 60 miles away on a hill, that kind of thing. And then had some interactions with the local club that weren't great, and we were doing simplex stuff, and 2-meter FM simplex, and there were some egos involved, and I saw somebody get screamed at the local ham fest in Stead, Nevada, one year, and that's just not me. I don't want to be part of that. And I just saw a lot of negativity, and I was fairly young. I was 19 years old. And then when I was 23, I got married, and I sold the only 2-meter rig. The only radio I had, this little Alinco tiny thing that was just a toy, really. And so I kind of moved on from that. And so I still have love for electronics. I was also into RC airplanes ever since I was a teenager. And at one point I got a plane. I like to build my own planes too, but at one point I got one that was a 48-inch delta wing, basically just a 48-inch wide triangle with an airfoil in it. And I got a bungee launcher for it. It was just, I think it's like 25 feet of surgical tubing to launch it. And that was when I posted my first video on YouTube. And that's this video right here. Bungee launching my 48-inch delta wing from Aerofoam, who's no longer around. But that was this video. And that's my son launching it. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's right there. There's an old Suburban I used to own. And I don't know if you can hear it. Hopefully you can. If you hear somebody kind of singing, that was my wife. She was taking the video, and I don't think she realized that it would pick her up singing to herself. But it did. And which is a wonderful memory for me. If you've been following me for the last couple of years, you'll know that my wife passed away a couple of years ago. So when I was reviewing that video, I kind of brought a tear. But that was what I posted on YouTube. Actually, I'm gonna go back to this. Click back here. That was my first video, and that was in 13 years ago. So 2010. I think I actually posted that. Let's see here. It just says February 22nd, 2009. So, 13 years and 11 months ago, I posted that video. And the next video is my son chucking a glider for me. I'm going to mute this here. Chucking a glider off this hill, which is above Reno for me. And I used to do slope soaring. That's my one true love when it comes to RCs. So that was a lot of fun. I posted that video and then did some time lapses. One of the things I really enjoy is making time lapse videos, and I usually use Canon PowerShots with the CHDK Canon Hack Development Kit firmware, which just loads onto an SD card. And then you can use scripts written in Lua to control it. So I did that, and I did a few videos. And then I got a truck, and it was this old Mitsubishi Montero, sold in the US as a Dodge Raider. I did some videos with that. and I did some camping with it, and then I had a really funny video. If anybody wants to watch this, it's kind of funny if you go back, called "Island in the Sun." It's not the Weezer song, although that is referenced. But my buddy wanted to find a geocache on an island in the middle of a kind of a residential park lake full of goose poop. He found it, but he could not figure out how to coordinate his little raft with the oars, and so he was constantly going in circles, and it was hysterical. And then I did some more time lapsey type stuff with one of my cameras just kind of sitting on a second story windowsill, and some more time lapses. This one's actually a private video. It doesn't need to be private. It's just stupid. And then did a few other things. I'm in the web hosting industry and have been for over 20 years. I did a video about how Apache Virtual Hosts work, and you can see like less than 300 people have ever viewed it. It's fine. Silly ringtone. I have silly ringtones because I get anxiety about the phone ringing because I've done so much phone work in my life for customer service. And but then you see 5 years ago, and let's see, this video. When does it say? April 7th, 2017. So that's almost 6 years ago. I posted this video about the BX40, how to switch lower sideband and upper sideband. Basically how to invert the VFO to get the other sideband so that you could use it on digital. And that was the first thing. So the BitX40 and getting my general and that stuff happened because an acquaintance of mine, an older gentleman named Ken, didn't know him real well. He's a good friend now, but he had a stroke and nearly died. And to try to get his brain active again, he and I actually had a lot of similar interests with being aviation and all sorts of things. He was came from a completely different background. He was a farmer, but we both had kind of the engineering mindset. And so I was tasked by some other friends, like, hey, can you help him learn radio stuff? Because they knew I was into this kind of thing, even though I hadn't done radio in years. I hadn't really picked up a radio since the early 2000s. And this was around 2017. So he started learning radio, and we started figuring it out together, kind of the blind leading the blind. And I helped him buy an Alinco DX R8 or something like that, just an HF rig, 100 watt HF base rig, and helped him figure out an antenna for it. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but we ended up with a good setup, an end-fed half-wave antenna, which I had no idea really what that even was at the time. Just read some stuff online, said it should work, so that's what we did. And anyway, he ended up getting his general, and which was really great because his mind was not very sharp at the time. And I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I just saw your note there, Andy. You saying fantastic videos. Sorry, I wasn't sure when you said that or what it was referring to. So if you want to explain that, I will be sure to actually read it. In fact, let me move this widget over so that I will notice it better. At least let me attempt to do that. Come on now. There we go. Trying to move this around so that I can see it. Anyhow, so anyway, Ken got his license, and of course I wanted to do the HF stuff with him. So, and we lived about 7 miles apart with a hill between us. So ground wave HF between us was never possible. Sometimes he had an HT, I had an HT, and we could hit a repeater, but he couldn't really get his mind around getting on the air. He got his license, he learned CW even, but I don't think he's ever been on the air. But as a thank you for, and by the way, around this time, that's when Farhan, HFsignals.com, released the BitX40, which I saw on Hackaday. And I about died. I thought, wow, there's an HF radio for $60. And I thought, I gotta have one of those. So at the time, I was married with my wife. She was alive, and we had our daughter at home, who was an adult. My wife couldn't work. My daughter wasn't working. I was the only income. So $60 is pretty hard to come by. But I talked about it so much that my wife ended up buying me one. And so my BitX40 was a gift from her. And she never saw me again. No, that was the beginning of that. And so just washing my glasses here. And that was the beginning of that. And so that was in, well, the first thing with that BitX40 is like, put it together, and I started receiving things. And I started, in fact, that's when I started doing my first posts on Miss.Geek. And I'll get into the history of that here in a minute. So I had this BitX40, and if anybody has had the original BitX40 without the Arduino, clever pun on Arduino, but if you didn't have that, you had the built-in VXO, voltage controlled oscillator, and so you had a potentiometer to vary the voltage against a certain diode. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, long story short, it was not stable, and you couldn't stay on frequency. And being a brand new ham, brand new with a general, brand new to HF, I had no way of really knowing what frequency I was on. So I wasn't comfortable transmitting because I was afraid that I'd be transmitting outside of my band allotment. And so what I would do is I would try to find something on like WebSDR to listen to, and then try to find that with the BitX40. And I even came up with I had an old copier that or a multifunction printer, copier, scanner thing that I had torn apart, and I pulled the gears out of that, and I actually made a geared drive for my BitX40 using those parts. In fact, let me see if I can't find that real quick, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah. Yeah, let me switch screens here. I'll show this to you. There it is. So I use like screws and stuff to screw the posts that I pulled out of this stuff. Anyway, you can see it there. One of those is attached to the potentiometer, and that's in an Altoids tin clearly, and I had it remoted next to the BitX40, and I would tune it that way. And that way I could actually find the signal, because just turning the potentiometer by itself, it would just go zoop, across the whole band in like half a turn. So I did that, and it actually worked ish, but I still wasn't comfortable transmitting. And I got on the BitX20 group actually, this might have been on Facebook. There's a fellow who started the BitX40 group on Facebook, and I think it was there that even Farhan said, if you want to have a better VFO, get the VFO kit from QRP Labs. That's the one we suggest. Again, this is before Arduino. So that's what I did. I contacted QRP. I bought it on QRP Labs. It was like $33 plus shipping. I think it's still $33 plus shipping. And fantastic deal, excellent VFO. I still have it somewhere, or at least the parts of it. And it worked. I was all of a sudden able to know where I was tuning, stay on frequency, and I started using it. I was checking into things like the Noontime Net, and I was listening, and then I saw this JT65 digital thing, and I went, oh my gosh, I gotta try that. And so I did. And let me switch back here. And Johnny, hi, hello. Thanks for joining. Sorry, I'm still trying to pay attention to the chat. It's kind of hard. I'm sorry about that. So yeah, howdy. So I got the BitX40 going with the QRP Labs VFO, but to use digital, I needed to invert the VFO so that it would go to upper sideband from lower, and that's when I started using my YouTube channel for that. Now, to really understand this, you have to understand Miss.Geek and what it means and why I put that together. Before all this happened, in 2015, I yeah, before all this, I think it was in 2014 actually. I picked up a guitar. This is completely off topic, but you'll understand. I picked up a guitar at a garage sale for $20, and it was a 12-string guitar. I still have aspirations for getting a 12-string guitar. I need to buy one. I found the one I want, and I just haven't got it yet. And it was a Stella, which was this terribly made, mass-produced, like Sears and what was the other Montgomery Ward catalog. Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for you. This is not me. This is you guys. I'm telling you the story because maybe somebody's interested in hearing it, but this is all you guys. Seriously, I'm just a guy doing a thing as far as I'm concerned. But anywho, I got this guitar and I really wanted a 12-string guitar, so I bought some strings and I strung it up, and the tension was so great and this guitar so not great. And it turns out it was supposed to be a 12-string gut string guitar, but I didn't even know that existed. And I put steel strings on it, so the whole thing just went wrong, just started bending like this, and the strings were like that high off of the neck, where the neck met the body. And so unstrung it, and and there's no truss rod in this thing either. And the truss rod is a steel rod that goes through the neck, and by adjusting its torsion, you can adjust the like how the neck is, how straight the neck is, like how much tension it has on it. And it didn't have one. And there's this. It turns out these things were like mass produced in Chicago in the 70s, and even in the early 70s, because I think it was made in like 1972. Even then, it was not a good guitar. But this thing had been played to death. The fretboard on the first 3 frets, which is where all the cowboy chords are, there was divots in the fretboard like that deep, where somebody had been playing it so much. So I knew the guitar could be played, but it was played out. Well, I did what they call a neck reset, and to do that on a guitar the right way, it involves releasing the glue by steaming it and actually taking the neck off of the body, and then shaving the dovetail joint and putting it back together. I wasn't going to do that, so I looked up what they call a kamikaze neck reset. And kamikaze reset was one of the first things I blogged about. In fact, let me just show you. Let me switch the display here. So these are my first 2 blog posts on Miss.Geek. And I did this reset, and it involved cutting right in here. There's the pictures of it. I ended up cutting across this with a dollar store, or not dollar store, but a saw, like a miter saw that I bought for $1 at a garage sale. Pretty sure the thing had been at a fire or something. I ended up cutting through it with that, and then using sandpaper to remove material, and then I bolted it back together. I'm not sure if I have pictures of that, but I sawed all the way down to the fretboard, and then bolted it back together. And I actually made the guitar kind of playable. When I moved up to Nevada from Washington last year, I threw it away. Actually, I was going to throw it away. I ended up giving it to one of my friend's kids to play with. It was kind of useless as a guitar. And I didn't want to bring it with me. It kind of smelled funky. I think I was done with it. But this was the first thing on Miss.Geek. And Miss.Geek for me is a concept more than it is a name of a website. Does anybody, maybe you want to comment or in the chat there if you remember Usenet. And if you don't remember Usenet, it was one of the first online forums. It predates the web. It's not a web-based thing. It's just an online forum using Usenet, and or it's called news groups. And you would use a program to connect to these news groups, and then you could subscribe to them. And subscribing to them just meant that you could read them or post on them. And they had names like comp.sci.misc for miscellaneous computer science, and there's a million other ones. And so there was some any subject, right? So I thought, well, what kind of cool name would I use? What kind of cool name could I come up with for my website that's short, maybe memorable, but describes what I'm trying to do. I was also at the time really, and I had been a member on Slashdot.org for since 2002. One of the first 500,000 subscribers to that, user accounts, which that was a big thing then, and Slashdot's nothing now, but it got sold and all this other stuff. But I liked that they used the word DOT slash DO, it's SLASHDOT.org /dot.org. And it sounds like a slash then a dot. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to do a play on that, kind of hark back to that, and then hark back to the Usenet days. If I had my own Usenet topic, it would be misc.geek, because I'm a geek doing miscellaneous things. And so that's what misc.geek came to be, and that was, so I decided that whatever, I'd seen lots of channels, lots of websites and YouTube channels where guys just documented their projects for fun, and I thought, I'd like to do that. I love writing, and I could hone my writing skills, I could document my projects, and have a reason for doing these projects other than just building junk, which I like to do anyway, but that'd be fun. So that's what I did, and I worked in the web hosting industry at the time, and I still do. Bought the domain name for $10 and I put up a website, and I also wanted to learn WordPress because WordPress was like the big thing, and it still is. I actually work in the WordPress industry now, so I built a website with WordPress, and I'm really glad I did because it really helped me a lot. And it says here there's one watching, so to the one watching, thank you for hanging out. Hope this is mildly interesting to you. You haven't left yet, so that's great. If there's nobody watching, I'm still going to do this because I'm doing it for me. This is a celebration of 1,000 subscribers and how I got here, right? So anyway, so that's what I did, and then of course I renamed my YouTube channel Misc.geek because it wasn't that before. It was just Ryan Flowers or whatever. So that happened. That happened. I want to say in 2014, because I can tell you exactly. This was June 7th. Well, I didn't publish the year, but I'm pretty sure that was June 7th, 2014. Pretty sure it was 2014. That's when I did that. I'll have to look later, but anyway, you get the idea. So that's what Misc.geek is and was, and then when I got that BitX40, it just became only ham radio stuff. And I've documented a few other things through the years too. These, I have a bunch of, there's some electronic stuff here, which again is mostly amateur radio now that I'm looking at it. And I'm okay with that, don't get me wrong. Oh yeah, I built a 70 amp arc welder. So there's other projects in here. I built a welder in 2007, and then used that welder to build a recumbent bicycle. And then I moved into an apartment that wouldn't allow me to have any storage, and I got frustrated and I had nowhere to put it, and I ended up throwing it away. But I have another welder. So anyway, I've documented my trike build on here. If you want to go look, it's called the Tri-Meridian. Just type in trike. In fact, you can use the search right here. And yeah, I built this trike, and I still have it. I just need to put it together and start writing it again. I hardly ever wrote it when I lived in Washington because it was always raining. So there's that. I've also documented some truck stuff. But going through the videos here to get back to this, I also wanted to scratch build a radio, and so I did. I built the DC40, and I've documented that completely. There's some other stuff in here. I went to a tough truck competition at the county fair, which is a lot of fun. I love truck stuff too. I also did some seat repair. Went to an old timers fair with some old engines and steam donkey and a bunch of other stuff. I installed the DC40 in an old clock radio that I bought at the local Goodwill for like $7, because when I looked at the radio at the shop, it is at a Goodwill, I went, I bet one of those 16 by 2 displays would fit in there perfectly. It did. I pulled out the display, I tore it apart, pulled out the display, and it just fit. It was like it was made for it. And, or is it 20? Yeah, 16 by 2, I think it is. Anyway, and that worked, but somewhere along the line when I was putting it together, a wire came loose, and so it worked intermittently, and I ended up having to tear it apart. And I also realized with that project, I hate Manhattan style building with a PCB and gluing down little pads and soldering everything together. I hated it. I solved that problem for myself though, and I'll show you that. Then I did this thing I called Project Brownie, where I took this old Kodak Brownie camera and I tore it apart. But it was just such a beautiful piece of Americana. It was like I think this one was made in 1963. It was incomplete. It probably would have worked if I put film in it, if I could get some. But I had no intention of actually using it for that. And I don't like things that just sit on shelves unless they're made for display, like the rocket behind me. That's made for display. I still play with it sometimes. I just took it apart the other day and was messing with it. It's Lego. It's made for that. And so I tore it apart and I put a QRP Labs QCX into it. And this is not a QCX Mini, a full-size QCX. Not the QCX Plus, but the original QCX, which was, this big and that thick. So I used a Dremel and I carved it out, and I thought I did a pretty good job with it. Unfortunately, some people got kind of bent out of shape because I was taking this kind of antique and ruining it. And even some people I really respected were like, "No, don't do it." And I'm like, if you don't like it, go buy your own. It's kind of how I look at it. I don't think anything is sacred as far as that goes. Anyway, I got it working, and it was a functional radio, but I didn't really know CW. I still don't. Or Morse code. If Chad's still watching. So I ended up selling it, and it sold, and that was great. So somebody else could maybe get some inspiration from it. But the idea though is be like in the 60s, if you had like really high technology, what would the CIA or GRU or whatever, what would they do with this high-end miniaturization of radio technology? But barely after the transistor was even invented. And I thought, well, they'd put it in something that a tourist might carry. So I thought, it was the spy radio concept. And frankly, it was pretty cool because you could put the cover on and except for a couple, I think it was the power jack and the CW key jack on the side, you would never know it wasn't just a regular Kodak Brownie. So that was, and I did several videos about that. So I was pretty proud of that. And in fact, there it is. There's the video saying it was complete. I tried explaining sideband rejection, and I got called out on Reddit for saying it wrong, but I was oversimplifying it. That was kind of fun. Because I think I can't remember the name of the law, but there's a law you don't have to ask a question on the internet. You just give the wrong answer and somebody else will correct you. And I experienced that. Did some Raspberry Pi stuff back when you could get those. And then I did some camping in 2020. And in 2020, my wife was it was clear that she wasn't going to live, and or is becoming clear. And I think that was August 2020, and it was November of 2020 when we found out that she was not going to make it. And so I went camping, and it really helped a lot. And then I did some more camping. And again, that was really therapeutic. And a lot of this too was therapy. I didn't have hardly any money, and the channel has never made money, the YouTube channel, but the website has. I signed up for Amazon Associates and did some other things. And I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But I would link to Amazon, and I still do. I link to Amazon things, and I get like 4% of the purchase price comes to me for the referral. And there were times I made like $100 a month, here and there. I don't think I ever made more than $100 in a month, but most of the time, like I just got a payment from a couple months ago. It was like $13. It's not very much, but it helped me be able to. I put it right back into the channel to buy more supplies, buy parts. I also did a thing with affiliate partnership with Banggood.com, and then they really pissed me off one day, and I took all that off. I haven't touched that for quite a while, and that thing was a drone. So, a friend of mine gave me a drone. He knew I was going through some pretty rough times, and he knew I loved RC stuff, and anyway, he bought me a drone, and it was this little like $70 Amazon drone, and it was awesome. This thing actually was really great for the price, and it had a little camera on it. You could adjust the viewing, the angle of the dangle, and I got some great photos with that. In fact, one of the best photos I ever took happened to have a bird flying right by to check it out, and it was really great. And the resolution was terrible, but that picture just turned out perfect. And then I got another drone. A guy I worked with recommended one, and I got it. It was good. I think I got that on Amazon. But I was looking on Banggood for drones. I wanted one with 1080p resolution and return to home with GPS, and I wanted one with a gimbal stabilization, 3-axis gimbal that you could angle up and down. My primary thing as I wanted to do was take pictures of sunrises and sunsets. So I wanted not this much sky and that much ground. I wanted it up the other way around. Well, it turns out this one I bought, it was a couple $100. I splurged some, got a couple of batteries with it, and you couldn't angle it up. You could only angle it from 90 degrees to 0. You couldn't go higher than level. So that was a problem. And then I had it next to my truck. I took off in my area in front of my house, and it was probably about 5 or 6 feet away from my truck, no wind, and it just flew into my truck uncommanded and like hard. And I was very surprised it didn't break a window. And it would do that. It'd drift, and it was known that it could do this kind of donut drifting, like in place. And I thought, inaccurate GPS, whatever, no big deal. But it actually just full on flew into my truck, and I never flew it after that. I sold it for $100 to get rid of it, and I actually haven't bought a drone since because, frankly, to buy a good one is going to be $1,000, and I don't want to spend $1,000 on something this big that's going to crash eventually. Even if I have $1,000 to spend, it's just not something I really want to do. I can take a lot of pictures with one of these or with my phone, and that's really what changed my photography. It was Pixel 4a 5G, favorite thing in the world. Plus, it has Google Assistant, which is pretty cool, and I gave it a Australian woman voice, and it's really hot. So that's why I call it my girlfriend. Anyway, so I'm blah blah blahing, which I am prone to do because of ADHD, which I'll talk about later. Anyway, so getting back to this, did a bunch of videos on the QCX Mini. I did a whole build series on the QCX Mini, which is great. That brought a lot of people in, and Hans at Summers actually put that on his website. He actually linked to it, and I also did the same for the QDX. So the QDX build series is on here. Did a bunch of videos about antennas that were pretty well received. But if you look at the views on these things, 50 views, 132, 83, 175, 793. You get the idea. This is small time stuff, and I'm okay with that. I've never tried to be big time. I've never really wanted to become a YouTuber specifically, and I don't really consider myself one now. I'm just a guy that does a thing who hit the 1,000 mark. And by the way, the 1,000 mark does not mean that I'm going to start making money with YouTube. I would need to have double the amount of views per year what I have now. And will I get that someday? Maybe. I don't care. And I've never really cared that much. But I can't deny that at 1,000 is a big milestone, even if it's only 1,000. It's 1,000 people that watch my videos when I publish a new one. Not everybody does, but a lot of people do, and I appreciate you all. Excuse me. So, I'm going to take a drink real quick. Yeah, so I also started doing more stuff about my truck, and I'll talk about that. I also started rebuilding my BitX40, and that's still not done. Excuse me. The BitX40 again was a gift from my wife, and so I really wanted it working again. But I had torn it apart bad. It was a mess. It's still kind of a mess. All the parts are kind of flying in formation now, but I tore the filters out of it. I tore the PA out of it. Had a lot of problems with that PA, mostly because of all my experimenting on it. And I burned the traces that go to the IRF 510. 2 out of 3 traces were just gone. And I think at one point 3 out of 3 traces were just gone. So it was just 3 holes in the board with nothing connected. And it started just having a lot of problems. And I remember what it was. Something broke. It just quit working one day. And no matter how much I looked at the board and tested, I could not find it until I started just willy-nilly cutting stuff off the board and unsoldering wires, just cleaning the board. And I found that one of the inductors, either one of the inductors or one of the transformers had a broken wire. And I never would have found it if I hadn't taken it apart. But by then, I'd completely disassembled it. I mean, the stuff was gone. Actually, I went too far. And I ended up having to buy 2N2219, I think it was, to replace the preamp. I actually did have to rebuild the preamp because it's still, you know what, let me grab it real quick. Let me do this. Give me 1 second here. So I collected some stuff. I like to collect things from garage sales and whatever, and I collected this old CB linear amplifier. And I got an entire like 1960s or an early 70s CB. I think it was like a Cobra. It's like a DNA manufacturing Cobra or something like that for like $3. And so I didn't have any qualms about tearing it apart. It was a completely, it was a 40 or 50-year-old tube rig that who knows if it worked. And I wasn't going to power it up and burn my house down. So I bought it for the case. And what I like about it is it's this style of a case that was common back then, and 2 screws and it just pulls apart. And so here's the BitX40 as it stands right now, and this is just kind of floating right now. But I'm using a QRP Labs PA in it right now. But this, where is it? This guy right here, I completely had to buy a new one and reinstall, a new heat sink and everything for it because that just didn't work. And then it's actuated gets power from the relay that powered the original PA, and then it inverts that with that transistor in there, and then that keys the PTT on the QRP Labs PA kit. You can see I've also got a bunch. These are the low pass filters here, and those are switched. And then the bandpass filter here, there aren't any bandpass filters, so you can, obviously this is not a complete deal. There's also there's no VFO. I haven't even opened this thing in a year. There's no VFO, but I've got a 4-to-1 transformer here to isolate the preamps and stuff. I haven't even looked at this in a while. I also put in a new crystal filter. I moved the crystal filter to 11.952 instead of I think it was using 12 megahertz crystals before, but I moved it to 11.0592, and I got videos about that. So that's where that's at. And I'm going to finish this, eventually. But it was a lot of work to get back to this point to where it actually works, and I have bypassed the filters and transmitted it into a dummy load, and it works. I just gotta actually finish it. So I mentioned ADHD, and about a year and a half ago, I got a new coworker, and her and I hit it off really well. And I'd been flying solo with what I was doing at the time, which I was a trainer for for a web hosting company, and she got hired because she was a professional educator, and she was awesome. And she says, I think you might have ADHD. And I said, wait, no, what? ADHD? What are you talking about? And so what I did is I went to a website. Let me switch screens here. I went to this website, nih.gov, and I started reading through this. And I went through this here, all these symptoms. And almost every single one of them described me. And almost every one of these described me. For example, interrupt or intrude on others. For example, in conversations, games, or activities. Have difficulty waiting one's turn. Talk excessively. Be unable to play or engage in hobbies quietly. That's actually not a problem. Leave their seats in situations when staying seated is expected, such as in the classroom or the office. I lost a job over that. Fidget and squirm while seated. I never do that. So I went to my doctor and I said, listen, I think I might have ADHD. And so she tested me for it. And some people go through this whole battery of tests. It takes hours with a psychologist or whatever. And my GP gave me a worksheet with 7 questions, and I was straight yes on every single one of them. She says, okay, you have ADHD, and what do you want? Like, what do you care? Or what does it matter? And I told her it doesn't matter. I just want to understand myself better. And I have understood myself a lot better. I also learned that coffee plays a big part in my life because it helps replace, it's a stimulant. And I recently went about a month and a week without coffee, and I could not believe how scatterbrained I became. Way more than usual. I'm never the most organized person, and it was way worse. So that was interesting. So anywho, so getting back to all this stuff, the channel. Let me switch screens here. So the channel went has taken me a lot of different directions, and did a bunch of QDX stuff. I really have enjoyed that. Then when I had a QDX blow up on the bench while I was putting it together, I screwed it up. It was my fault. I don't remember what happened, but I wasn't in a great place up here. And I've had a lot going on in the last year and a half, 2 years. It's been since my wife passed away. I really put a lot of myself into the hobby, into the site, and well, not so much into the site, but into the YouTube channel, and that was great. I needed that. Lately, it's been a little bit different, and I'll explain that. And that's when somebody sent me a Nano VNA, and another person sent me actually in a digital oscilloscope, which I've really haven't been able to even touch. People just start kind of sending me stuff, and for those, thank you. It was a huge honor. A short story. When I was about 17, I was living in Palm Springs, California, and I worked at a Staples office supply store, and I worked in the computer aisle. The second week I was there, their main computer aisle guy got fired because he stole a computer. Brilliant. And then 3 or 6 months later, the other girl, the other person who was a gal named Liesel, she quit. And so at 17 years old, I was the guy in charge of the computer aisles. In the year and a half I worked there, I sold 1 computer. I was not good at this. But I knew computer stuff. And what I did end up doing was getting people saying, can you come to my house and help me with my computer? And my boss is okay with it. The store manager, this is before Staples had, their own tech support thing going on. This is in the early 90s, 1993-ish, 94. And this retired couple, I say old, they're probably in their 70s, the late 60s, early 70s, had me out to work on their computer. And the guy says, I want to show you something. And he shows me this collection of binders. They say Heathkit on them. And he shows me the product of this, which was a Heathkit oscilloscope. And he must have seen my excitement and my awe, and I've never seen an oscilloscope in my life. And it was a basic electronics course with the goal being to build and understand the operation of this oscilloscope, which he had done. He said if I promised to use it and learn it, I could have it. Well, I left with a trunk full of that stuff, and I did play with it. Teenager likes to play with things, and I hooked my RC transmitter at 72 megahertz up the output, the antenna, directly to the probe, and I was watching it on the screen. You could see the pulse width modulation changing and stuff when you move the sticks, and I learned something. I also learned about harmonics because while I was using this thing, car alarms started going off in my neighborhood, and years later, I always wondered why that happened. And when I started learning about radio and the harmonics and stuff, I looked up the frequency that I used. It was 72.38385 or something like that. I did the math a little bit, and it was the third harmonic, I want to say, or fourth harmonic, was right in the same frequency within a few hundred hertz, or within a few hundred hertz of the same frequency used in car alarm remotes. So by hooking it up to that, it basically it turned it into a transmitter and transmitted these harmonics to the anyway. And so I set off a bunch of car alarms. Pretty funny. Just pretty amazing that it's actually that big of a deal. Harmonics are, which makes a lot of sense. Of course, there was no filters. You had to filter it at 100 megahertz or something. The low pass. I didn't know anything about anything. Anywho, I should have attenuated it with like a 20 dB attenuator, then looked at it. But of course, again, didn't know anything. At the same time, I was also doing work for a local FBO, fixed base operator at the airport, Palm Springs Airport, and I did a trade with them and was actually going to ground school, which was a disaster. I was an idiot, so I won't even talk about that further. But in the midst of all this, I ended up having to move, and I couldn't take anything with me, and so I ended up giving that oscilloscope and the stuff to a friend who was living in like a 15-foot trailer. I never saw it again, and I did see that friend once, like 10 years later, and anyway, never saw that stuff again. So I've always had kind of a bit of guilt about that because I promised that guy, but life does stupid things. So you can't really control that. But so I'm really happy now that I've been able to bring some value to other people through this channel. And I actually don't have a scope now. Somebody had given me one basically for the price of shipping. And when I moved up to Nevada in August of last year, I had to get rid of a lot of things. And I ended up giving it to somebody else for the same price that I got it. To kind of as a pay it forward type thing. And I'm going to be getting one in the next couple months. I'm going to be redoing everything here. I'm in Nevada now. So I'm going to be redoing everything here and getting restarted in the next couple months, I hope. So anyway, so that's kind of how I ended up where I'm at now. So the question is, where am I going? What's next? And let me pull something up here. Give me a second. So there's been a couple of things that have happened in the last few months. Now, one of the reasons I moved back to Nevada was because in Washington, I live near the coast in Elmo, Washington, 98541 if anybody wants to Google it. It's only about 30 miles from the coast, which means that you get the coastal weather. And it was cloudy all the time. And although I've never been diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder, I mean, it's pretty obvious that when you're depressed because it's gloomy outside, that you've got that. Plus, I lived in the house where my wife passed away. My wife died at home, which was planned. We knew she was dying. She was on hospice care at home, and she died February 2nd, 2021. And so living in that house was very hard. I actually was, here and I talked about it, I was actually sleeping in the room that she had been in. And I'd been sleeping on the couch for years. And it's a little bit personal, but I don't mind saying it. I've been sleeping on the couch since like 2014. because her health was so bad. So when she died in 2021, I was 8 years sleeping on couches, which wasn't good for my body. And she insisted that when she passed that I take over that room and also that bed. That that was not sustainable. I couldn't really do that, and it was kind of a lot to ask, but it seemed reasonable to her, and it even seemed reasonable to me. I just had to get past that mental hurdle, and it was doable, but I couldn't really just be there anymore. I moved there for her, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't be there for me. I didn't want to be there. I mean, I had a lot of friends who are family to me now, but I just couldn't stay, and so I moved back to Nevada, which is where I'm originally from. That's where I was born. So one of the reasons I moved here instead of moving just somewhere else, because I have family and friends nearby, but it's sunny all the time, and one of the things that I really love doing is off-roading. I have an '88 Suburban, and I actually have another YouTube channel that's just for that. It doesn't have a lot of content on it, called Square Bourbon. The word square, Bourbin. Anyway, so I have that, but I want to get out more. And since I've moved here, I've been getting out a lot. Washington, there's not a whole lot to do in this little town I was in, unless you want to travel. And I never really had the money to go traveling. Having my wife in that situation, and then my daughter was at home. The business I'm in, you typically don't really make very much money, not for being in IT. But about a year ago, I started working for another company, and I actually I'm better off, a lot better off. They actually pay me what a person's worth, not what the least they can get away with, which is huge. And my daughter got married last year and is living on her own, or with her husband. So it's just me now, and I have more freedom than I've had in a long, long, long time. So I'm using that freedom to get out more. And when you're out more, you're not at home. And when you're not at home, you're not working on radios. So there's going to be some changes. One of the changes is I'm probably going to do some long-term projects that will take time, but I'm not going to be focusing as much on those. I'm still going to be building radios. In fact, one of the long-term projects that I need to finish is the BitX40. There's also some new QDXs that have come out. There's now the QDX high band version, which is it's 90 cents more, and there's just different inductors, and you can put it on. Let's take a look here, actually. So this is the QDX, and the high band has 20, 17, 15, 12, and 11 meter. Let's make this bigger here. Too big. So 11 and 10 meter. So it's actually 6 bands, and I'm gonna get one of those, and I'm gonna put it together and I'm gonna use it. Those are cool. I also need to fix the QDX that I have, which is it's typically the 80 through the typical 80 through 20, because the PA blew up on it and I need to replace parts, and I just haven't had the gumption to do it because it's been cold in my garage where my bench is. It's gonna be moving over here, but that's that's the project all on its own. There's also the QDX monobander, and I'm not going to order one of those because I don't need it. I'm definitely going to get the QDX high band because I think it'll be really great for my backyard, because I don't have very much room for antennas, but a 20 meter antenna is easy to put up and can be used on 10 meters. So I'm not sure how I'm going to work that, if I'm going to do like an auto tuner or whatever, but I'm actually going to put the whole thing outside with at least that's the goal, and then remote into it. I've got a laptop, and just basically going to make a weatherproof box and put it on Wi-Fi out there and then remote into it. At least that's the plan. Something I want to do by summertime. And fix the one I have and have that one. And I think it'd be really cool to be able to do that. The other thing, I want to get the BitX40 finished, and I'm back on the air. Even if I don't ever use it, I just want to have it done and get that completed. Now, there is a gap right now in the market that I'm going to try to kind of fill. And that gap is for a monoband sideband rig. The BitX40 was awesome because you buy a board you solder a few connectors together, and you've got a working radio. Now you can still do that with the Microbit X version 6, but this may be an unpopular opinion, but I think it's a crappy radio. It's a couple $100 now. It's touchscreen. Why? I don't get it. And Farhan, if you see this, I'm not saying you did a bad thing. I'm saying I don't think this radio does what a radio in its position should do, and that is it doesn't fill the gap that was left when the BitX40 was taken off the market. It just doesn't. It's multi-band. There was nothing but problems with the original Microbit X's. That's not to say that I think Microbit X's are terrible. And the proof in that... Whoa, my chair here. The proof of that is this. I have a Microbit X version 4. I bought this for, I want to say $80 from a guy who never finished it, couldn't figure it out. And I thought, well, he said it was broken or something, and I was like, well... I was really depressed. It was after my wife died, and I'm like, yeah, I resisted getting a Microbit X for years, and I'll just get it and see what happens. Well, when this thing got shipped to me, it was together like this. I mean, the parts weren't here, but it was kind of together, but the board itself was floating around inside unattached, and that's how it got shipped to me, which wasn't great, and I was actually pretty upset about that. And I got it working. It had one or two broken inductors or wires or something. Yeah, I got it working, and it works. It's a fine radio. I'm not saying it's not a good radio. I'm saying the Microbit X version 6 is just kind of over the top. And now he's got the the SDR based, or I forget what he's calling it, but it's another radio that's like half SDR and half not, half analog radio. It's basically using SDR. It's not SDR, it's DSP. And those are actually pretty different. Is using digital signal processing for the audio, but it's not even IQ audio going into it. It's just standard SSB with processing, and that's not. I don't find value in that. So what I would like to do is, and here's another thing I did. Last December of 2020, I built the W7 RLF, or I designed and had produced the W7 RLF prototype board. And let me pull that up here. And that's this board here. That's this guy. And PCBWay sponsored me for it, which is really cool. They'll sponsor just about anybody, obviously. And so I didn't really have to pay for these. They gave them to me, but I think I got 10 of them for the price of the shipping or something like that. But the cool thing here is that this is a great prototyping board, because I wanted to build the Pete Giuliano's PSSST20. I even started a whole group for it on groups.io. I still haven't built it. I have all the parts. I just haven't put it together. I got stuck on the audio amplifier, and that is a goal too. I'm going to finish that. Once I get that finished, once I get the BitX40 finished, my next goal is to use these boards to do a project, and that project is going to be scratch building a BitX40, basically. I'm probably going to use the BitX40. I actually have a design that I've rebuilt my BitX40 using elements of the Microbit X's design, because it's the BitX40. What I learned about it is that, and this is a technical detail that I learned, and all of a sudden when I unlocked this bit of knowledge, it helped me understand why it never performed as well when I was doing a bunch of modifications with it. So basically, the BitX40 is an unbalanced radio. All of the different stages of the radio are 200 ohm. They're not 50 ohm, and they're not terminated. And that means that the bandpass filter, now the PA is terminated to 50 ohm, but it's actually isolated by a 0.01 microfarad or picofarad or whatever. I always get that mixed up. It's isolated by a capacitor from the amplification stages to the PA preamp. and including, so it goes from the preamp, the mixers and the amplification stages, microphone mixer, or microphone amplifier, to the product mixer, to the amplification stage for that, and then to the VFO mixer, and the crystal filter, and then the other amplification stages, and then the VFO mixer. Anyway, all those are 200 ohm. And then it went to the bandpass filter, and the bandpass filter that came with the BIT X40 was also 200 ohm. It was designed for 200 ohm, not 50 ohm. So when I ripped that out and replaced it with a QRP Labs filter, it still worked, but there's it didn't work as well because that was a 50 ohm piece made for a 50 ohm circuit. And so that's why the BIT X40, when I rebuilt it, it has this 4-to-1 transformer here, right there, because the very next thing I'm using is QRP Labs bandpass filters, which are 50 ohm. So, and that's why the BIT X40 was awesome, because it used that compromise to simplify construction so that there are fewer parts, which is great. It really is. So I'm probably going to do something similar to what that is, so that I can build out a design that uses QRP Labs parts, which is basically what I've done with mine. So mine's really a prototype for what I would like to do in designing a radio based around this prototype that somebody can build from scratch using my boards, or Manhattan or whatever else. But it's going to be basically a set of schematics. The only thing I plan on making available for the kit is the boards, which you can order on PCBWay. So you can click add to cart, and if you see here, I've actually, this is my own personal account. 95 people have downloaded it, but 102 have ordered these boards, and that's $421 worth of orders and payments, and I got $42 of that. I didn't put that up there so that I could get money back. I didn't even know I could, but you get something for it. Obviously, I haven't used it; it's still there, but those, I'm gonna make it just much like the DC40 project that I did, where I documented how to build a direct conversion receiver. I'm going to do the same thing for a sideband transceiver. And it'll be able to be used on any band up to 10 meters. So just by switching out the filters. It's going to be a mono bander, but you can just pull the filters out and pop in new ones and tune it to wherever you want. So it should work from anywhere from 80 to 10 meters, just based on what filters you put in it. Of course, and this is the beauty of the QRP Labs PA kit, is that it will work up to 10 meters just fine. It's actually been tested up to 6 meters, but I don't think that design will do anything past 10. So that's a goal. I would like to be able to make it so that anybody can build a radio from scratch, because I want to build a radio from scratch, and it's totally a possible thing. So that's something I want to get to. But I'm also going to be putting let me get back to this here. But I'm also going to be getting back to the miscellaneous in Miss.Geek. One of the things that I've learned about ADHD is that the attention shifts a lot. And ADHD doesn't mean you can't pay attention. That's, I mean, I guess for some people it is, but for me it's not. I can pay attention just fine, ish. Once my attention is on something, I can do really well, and that's called hyperfocusing. And that's really one of the superpowers of ADHD, is being able to hyperfocus. But it means that the subjects of my attention change rather frequently. If I were to list my hobbies, I'm into off-roading, I'm into RC planes, I'm into amateur radio, I'm into computers, not as much as a hobby. I'm into 3D printers now, which I got that in November, and I love that thing. And I'm also into building real projects with the 3D printer, not just printing trinkets, which is fun. But let me show you what I'm working on right now. And I'll show you more about this here in a minute. In fact, let me just show you this. They updated. Oh, that's something else. Give me a sec here. So this is Hadley. Hadley is a 3D printed telescope. It's a Newtonian 114 millimeter aperture, right? Yeah, 114 millimeter aperture, or about 4.5 inch Newtonian telescope, and it's 3D printed. I actually wrote an article on Hackaday, and that's something I haven't talked about yet. In August of 2021, I started writing for Hackaday, which was kind of a big dream of mine. I had wanted to apply more than once, but I just was going through too much, didn't have the bandwidth for it. I barely have the bandwidth for it now, and I'm not sure how long I'm going to even be writing for them, because I just haven't been able to do it much. But this shirt's actually a Hackaday shirt that from Remoticon 2021. They gave the writer shirts, which was really cool. And I just recently became able to fit into this shirt, and I'll talk about that too. I couldn't fit into it 3 months ago. Give me 1 second here. Answer this. So this is a 3D printed telescope, and you can see here it's got these rods, and these are just like steel or aluminum rods, and then there's a mirror down here and a spherical mirror down here, and then there's another mirror down here, and then the eyepiece and the focuser and all this stuff. And I saw that and I thought, I really got to have one of those. I've always, ever since I found out that it's possible to build your own telescope, I thought that'd be a really neat project. But now that I had a 3D printer, which I bought after seeing this project being possible, so that was mainly the main reason I went and bought a 3D printer, was so that I could do that. And so this is the lower telescope assembly. This is the upper telescope assembly. This is the focuser that's going to go here. That stuff is actually printing right now. And here's these bearings that it slides on. And here's the middle assembly, which I'm reprinting so it's not two different colors. So yeah, I'm building a telescope. And the cool thing about that telescope is that those parts are cheap. And you can source all the parts yourself, but the guy who designed that kit, Math on that page, he actually sells a kit for $100. He calls it a vitamin kit, and the vitamins being a term for like the missing parts, the things that aren't, the things you can't 3D print. And so you can source them all yourself and spend $60 or $70, or maybe a little bit more, or you can spend $100 with him and he just ships it to you. So I've got the mirror and all the hardware, and there's even a eyepiece. So and you all probably know this. Anybody watching probably knows that the magnification in a telescope happens in the eyepiece. I didn't know that, but the light is collected by the mirrors, but the magnification itself happens with the eyepiece. So it includes one of those, and I've got most of the parts. I need to buy some wood to build a base for it and all that kind of stuff, but I'm going to be documenting that on my website and on YouTube, probably more on YouTube. I also joined their Discord group and have been getting a lot of help from there. I found out that their documentation isn't good. I'm not going to say it sucks, but they might say it sucks because it's known that it's not that great. But guess what? I know a guy that likes to write stuff and has written documentation on how to build things. And so I volunteered to go through their documentation and add to it, take pictures and stuff. They've got like a nice Google Slides set, and so I've got access to that, and I'm going to be contributing to that project in that way. And of course, it'll be here on Miss.Geek. I also found some cool RC stuff that I'm going to start doing. It's going to get me outside. I need to be outside more. It's just a matter of fact. And I used to be outside all the time, and I haven't been for 10 years because I was in Washington, where if you go outside, you're going to get rained on, and I really don't like rain. I fairly despise it, frankly. When it rains all the time, a little bit of rain here and there doesn't, not made of sugar, but Lots of rain for me is lots of pain, and I hate it. So I'm going to be getting outdoors a lot more. One of the ways I'm going to do that, I bought a GPS last year when I moved here. Got it for like $4 at a garage sale, GPS receiver. So I'm going to do some exploring, some camping, maybe some geocaching again. I used to do that a lot and I loved it, but I'm not really sure about that one. But it's going to be things that don't necessarily involve ham radio. I mean, RC planes don't involve ham radio. And I don't intend them to. It's a different hobby altogether. Also really enjoy camping, like I said, exploring, going to old mining camps and ghost towns, and just kind of seeing history in the dirt, you know. I picked up a couple of books about geology. I want to learn more about that. So trying to get outside more, which means, again, not inside working on radios. And because I'm going to be inside more often, or outside more often, there's an opportunity to involve ham radio, and that's going to be through POTA. Parks on the Air. Summits on the Air, probably not, but Parks on the Air, there's a lot I can do. I live near a fair number of places I can activate. I also intend to travel. I'm now in a position where I can, so I don't really think that home built gear is going to hold up to that. I mean, maybe it will once I get good at it, but I'm not counting on it. So I'm actually looking at maybe picking up a used FT817 or 818. I think those are probably used for about $600 somewhere in there, and I could do that, and I think that'd be really great. Obviously Peter Parker Peter Parker VK3YE. He's done hundreds of videos, including his FT817, and so clearly they're good radios. And I also really think an IC705 is a pretty dang cool rig. It's also about at least twice the price of an FT817, but it's all, it's SDR based. It's got the big shiny display. I mean, it's a pretty shiny rig, and that's not something you're going to homebrew without spending a few years in development. And I've never been big on commercial gear. I do have a Kenwood TS430S. That's, I think it's built in the 80s. And I've always thought that was just a neat rig. It's got multi-mode, 80 through 10. But this one goes 80 through, or I think it's 160 through 70. Or does it even have 630 in it? I'm not sure. I can't remember, and I can't remember what that number that's receive frequency. Anyway, so it's an all-mode portable, and it has pretty good reviews. I might get one of those so I can do some SOTA, and maybe even some satellite work. I have heard satellites on an HT, and I would love to build an antenna and get outside and do some satellite work. I think those are, who wouldn't want to do that? Yeah, so there's those things. I also am I got a trip coming up, and once I'm back from that, I'm going to be joining the local pool and getting exercise. I just recently did a big 30-day cleanse, lost some weight, which is why this shirt fits now, but I also feel a million times better. Like, not even kidding. I'm not going to go into that. I'm not wanting to tell people how they should manage their health, but I did a cleanse called the Master Cleanse, and it really changed everything for me. It's kind of like a full body reboot. And again, not really recommending it for others because everybody's an individual. The thing that worked for me could probably kill somebody else, like a diabetic, for example. So not really recommending it, but it changed things a lot for me in a very, very good way. Let's see here. So there's that. I think I kind of covered that stuff pretty well. Again, I love RC gliders, and I live within an hour of a great place to fly them. And I can now afford the gas to take my truck and go do that, and camp out there for a night and fly out by where the hang gliders fly. It's actually a hill that during the Reno air races, you can go up on that hill and see the entire race. So it's right by Stead, Nevada. Right between Stead and Cold Springs. It's called Red Rock. Even if you go to Google and look up Red Rock Road in Stead, Nevada, you'll see these hills between Stead and Cold Springs, and they're great for slope soaring. I also intend to go to California with my friend and camp and do some slip soaring on the California coast. So, there's a lot I want to do, and it's not going to be involved being at home working on radios. Now, during the winter, I think next winter I'm going to get a lot more done with radios. This winter is kind of a wash. Or who knows, maybe I'll be traveling down south and spending some time doing that. I don't know. But I'm going to be getting, like I said, I'm going to be moving my shack. And can't take that right now. I'm going to be moving my shack back in the house and getting an oscilloscope again and trying to get set up for that. But I'm not going to be operating from in the house. I'm going to be operating from my backyard or from portable or from my truck or whatever. So that's kind of where I'm going there. I'm going to get the miscellaneous back into my life. I can't do just radio anymore because my life has changed significantly and for the better. I never thought I would be able to be as happy as I am right now after my wife passed away. And trust me, the anniversary of her death is only a couple weeks away. So that's a very hard time, but there's so much life to live, and she never would have wanted me to just hold back and be in mourning forever. I still mourn her all the time, but it can't be. There's more to life than that, and there has to be. Otherwise, there's a severe imbalance, and right now I'm kind of compensating for years of imbalance of being a caregiver and a provider, and now I can care for myself and provide for myself, so I'm going to do that. So I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to mention. This is it. This is why I want to do this live stream now. Hitting 1,000 subscribers has been huge. It's a big milestone, and I just want to thank everyone. And I see there's 3 people on right now. But I expect that when this is posted, we'll come back and watch at least parts of it. And if not, it's fine. But I really want to thank everyone for just sticking with me. My writing, for a while I ran that Facebook group. I still have the QRP Tech group and the PSSST20 groups.io. Those are both on groups.io. I very loosely manage those. There's just been so much support, from the community. I would probably be doing this anyway without the community, but it's so much better with. And I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who's actually watching and who's subscribing. I can't really think of anything else. I kind of talked myself out there. Pretty unusual for me, because I know how to talk, obviously. Let's see, I'm going through my list here, because I posted this list on my website. POTA, Portable Operations, talked about that. Branching out, putting the Mist back, Mist.geek, talked about that. Commercial gear, talked about that. Upcoming projects, talked about that. New QRP lab stuff, talked about that. Overcoming hurdles such as ADHD and how it affects everything. I touched on it. If anybody has questions about that, you're welcome to ask, and I can tell you about that. Goals for personal development and future personal development and how they'll affect the channel and site. Talked about that. So I'm out of topics. If anybody has questions, now would be the time to throw them in the chat. If you want to know anything about me or the channel, or if you want to talk about talk radio or anything. So I know there's a delay, so I'm going to sit here and be quiet for a sec while you type something there in the chat if you want to. And you know what? One thing I haven't talked about is that my Rocket. So I actually work for a company called Rocket. That is not a rocket company, but we provide very fast hosting. It's called rocket.net. Excuse me. And if you go to rocket.net and go to About Us, you'll see my ugly mug on there. And I manage the technical support team, and I can genuinely say we have the best technical support in our business, and I can say that because our customers say it. I don't need to say it, actually, but it is the truth. We have an amazing team, and we do good work, and our customers really appreciate it. And we charge well for our services, but we also provide better than any of our competitors. And I say that as somebody with over 20, almost 25, 24 years in the business. We're doing amazing things that I've never seen done before. But this rocket, however, when I was a kid, I loved to play with Legos. And when I moved here, I didn't have any decorations at all. This room was barren. I'm in a renting situation where I'm not allowed to even put a hole in the wall for a nail to hang a picture. I can use command strips, but I'm nervous about using those because I've also had them take off paint. My landlady is a very lovely lady, but she's very particular, and it's in my lease. I cannot put holes in the wall to hang pictures. I agreed to it, so if I don't like it, it's my fault, right? I have brought it up to her, and she didn't budge, so whatever. So I wanted a decoration, and I saw that if anybody follows Scott Manley, if you don't, look up Scott Manley, Manley, on YouTube. He's fantastic. He talks mostly about spacey stuff, but I like space stuff. And I always saw this rocket in his background, and he actually has the launch tower. He actually has that too, but Lego never made one. Anyway, I used to play with Legos a ton as a kid, and I'm sure it affected my development into who I am now. But they had discontinued this. They made like a few thousand kits, and then or so many, and then they discontinued it. Well, they reissued it under a different part number. I saw it on Amazon, and I clicked buy now, and that thing showed up, and it was 1,969 pieces, and it's a Saturn V rocket, Saturn V, 1969 moon landing. So you'll see there's a hole in it right there, and I removed one of the panels so that you could see the Apollo module sitting there, the command mod. I think it's the command module sitting in there. So it's got like a little scale Lego command module, and it's actually modular. It pulls apart into the first, second, and third stage. It's really cool, and it took me 12 hours to build, I want to say. I think it had 12 bags, and they each took about an hour. 12 bags of pieces. It was $120. So if you like Legos, you like space, and you have $120, go buy it. It was worthwhile. It's a fantastic display piece. And then the other thing is the 3D printer. You can actually 3D print a fake Lego type thing to make the launch tower, the big tower that sits next to it. Somebody built one that was like twice the size of that, but you can scale it down in the slicer. That's the other thing is 3D printing has been a pretty cool thing. There's all this terminology, just like radio. There's all this terminology that's specific to 3D printing, like a slicer. And all it is software that takes a 3D design and turns it into a G-code file, which is the CNC code for the 3D printer, so it knows where to go and where to squirt out hot plastic. But you can scale things up and down. In fact, the telescope that I'm working on printing right now, it comes with a file for these things, which they don't actually go on the telescope, but you're supposed to size these by scaling them down or up depending on your printer, because no printer is absolute. Everything's relative with these things, so dimensions are all relative, and so you print this and you change the size so that it fits over the steel rod, and I ended up having to go to 97% original size. So anytime I print something for this, I have to make sure I print it at 97%. So you can scale things up and down accordingly, and so some people have printed the launch tower that goes next to that. I looked at it, and it takes like 2 solid weeks of printing to do, and I don't think I'm going to do that. I like 3D printing; it's really neat. But I think this telescope is probably the largest thing I'll ever print. Although I did print this, and no, this is not a wind turbine or a corkscrew for a ship. This is actually an egg holder, and it has some flaws. You can kind of see these like runners, like this one. Where is it? Here. You can see like it didn't work. It's enough. I'll probably throw it in the fridge and use it, maybe. but it didn't turn out that great. 3D printing is hard. It's actually really hard. It's really time consuming. It's also messy. If you guys watch my short videos that I posted that one of my favorite 3D printing accessories is this thing, because little plastic stuff goes everywhere. Anyway, so I'm having a lot of fun with that. I don't see any other questions or comments, so last call for that, and then I'm going to hang it up. So thank you everyone for watching, for hanging out with me. Let's see here. Yeah, so it says there's one watching right now. So I'm going to go ahead and hang it up. I don't have anything else. So thank you everyone. Keep an eye on the channel. I also have another channel, if anybody's gonna ever see this. I have another channel called Ryan's Dad Jokes. I love telling dad jokes, dumb puns and silly jokes for kids, or that kids might tell, but like well, you know what, just go to the channel. It's Ryan's Dad Jokes, and you'll see me telling stupid jokes, and I love making people laugh if I can. So I've been having fun with that. It's only about a week and a half old, but there's a few people that are subscribed, and I've had a few thousand views on some of them. So that's fun. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. And maybe keep an eye out.